I believe we're live. Sorry for the delay, everybody. A bit of technical issues, which we did have resolved. I'd like to introduce David Dodd. He's going to tell you all about himself and all the great things he's working on. He's president, CEO, founder of the International Sustainability and Resource Resilience Center. And we've had David on. We've scheduled him a little while ago, and then he had some travels and things. So a lot is involved since then. So first, we'll start off. David, tell us all about yourself and your background, and then just some of the recent projects. We'll get into your book and a lot of other great things for you to share with us. Go ahead, David. Welcome.
Sure, and I'm very grateful to be invited to be on this. I am a huge fan of facility managers. You guys run things, and I'm a big fan of any profession that runs things. My own background is starting in banking and then going into economic development. I've been in economic development now for 35 years. But along the way, I encountered this thing called Hurricane Katrina. I live in New Orleans. So this was obviously a very personal thing, but it also opened the door to a new profession that I now spend about 80% of my time in, and that's disaster resilience and recovery.
Sure.
Along the way, I uh, connected with the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. They have a public private partnership center of excellence. And I was originally one of 8 specialist centers of excellence. And my center dealt with disaster recovery and resilience using public private partnerships. Not long after that, I founded the International Sustainable Resilience Center. And about a year after founding that, I co founded the World Association of Public Private Partnership Units and Professionals, or WAP, which you're involved with, Wayne, in the North American chapter. I am the chair of the Sustainability and Resilience chapter, and we're always looking for ways to bring public private partnerships and resilience together. That has really exploded in the past year.
Can imagine.
Just a little bit more about that, and then I'll connect it to what you guys do in facility management. In 2025, I think in part due to severe cutbacks in investments in sustainability, which by definition is basically carbon reduction,
Hmm.
carbon mitigation, and that shifted everyone's attention to what I do primarily, which is climate adaptation, and that's the same thing as resilience.
Sure.
And so investments in climate adaptation went from 4% of total climate investments to 40% in a year. $1.35 trillion of new money has been committed to increasing resilience around the world. Sorely needed. We still need more, in fact, to be
Absolutely.
able to bridge the gaps that have been around for decades in what we need to invest in climate resilience and what is being invested. But it's certainly a great step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Do you
So,
find, David, sorry, do you find, David, that there's more of an awareness now by virtue of the so-called, frequently occurring 100-year events that are happening much more than that interval? Like there's more of an awareness now, and obviously it has an impact and a cost. So better to get ahead of it, like you said, and prepare for that and be resilient. You're gonna have to spend the money anyway, and it's a lot better to do it proactively instead of reactively. Do you find that, or is it more of an
that
awareness?
is that is exactly what has happened, Wayne. And I I'm a pretty pragmatic guy, and I say, look, I don't get into the whole debate about what causes climate
Yeah,
change. All I know is that you have to have your eyes closed if you don't believe that the climate is changing. The numbers bear that out.
sure.
And the thing that often people that believe that the climate's not changing say is, well, we didn't have any hurricanes in 2025 in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, that's not the way this works. It's not on a straight linear path. It goes, it's not like this. It goes up and down. You can't predict the climate. You can try to predict the weather. There's an old saying. As I said, in economic development, the only two professions where you can be consistently wrong and still be successful are economics and weather forecasting.
That's very true.
Because both are really hard to predict. But my point is that the overall line is upward.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing these impacts start to really take shape in the way of heat waves, drought, and it's not all, they stopped saying global warming for a reason, because it's not only hotter, it's colder.
True.
Because these massive weather systems like the Gulf Stream that have been around for eons are being disrupted. And so, we had record cold temperature all across the United States and in Canada too. I know, Wayne, over the past couple of weeks. That is a result of climate change.
Yeah, and it's a connected world too. You're not isolated in a certain sphere or location of the globe, even though that might be sort of halfway across the world. What happens there through the jet streams and other factors, that it does have an impact. So we're all kind of part of that solution or problem, if you will. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, being in economic development as long as I did a lot of work alongside facility managers. And, I've been in and out of being associated with you guys for several years, and I'm loving being, kind of permanently attached to you guys. And, to me, what's happening makes your responsibilities more difficult. And so the best way to remedy that is to make yourself as aware as possible, as you possibly can, to new innovations, new methods, in the resilience field, so that you can make your own facilities that you're responsible for more resilient.
Yeah. Do you feel, David, it's also, it is a bit of a two-pronged approach. It's sort of even before, like resilience is dealing with them being prepared. Business continuity and emergency preparedness, that's all vital, critical functions you need to be, prepared for. But that said, and I know you have sort of stepped away from that, which is very controversial, the sort of argument, the environmental argument, if you will, or the GHG reduction, all that kind of stuff, right? Even if you don't use the terms global warming, or you're not an Al Gore fan or whatever, there's so many different schools of thoughts, and can come up with compelling arguments on both sides of the equation. That said, you can't refute the facts. When you look at the trend it's a troubling trajectory. You look over the last 5-10 years, it's not going down, it's going up. So, maybe you don't know the reason for it, but so preparing for it makes sense, like which focus of what our discussion is today. But part of the solution is also mitigating that and, reduction of certain things, which, are kind of fundamentally, from a technical or even scientific point of view, are something, just kind of the best practice of things you should be doing to some degree. As to how much, there's a cost to that, of course, a premium. And that's part of the problem too. The economics come into play, and it's like, yeah, it's a good idea, but not today, maybe tomorrow. And, it'll be the next generation that gets stuck with that unfortunate problem and costly resolution to that as well, I imagine.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. The thing that, to me, is readily apparent is the cost of this.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad always said, if you really want to get someone's attention, you talk about what's in their pocketbook.
Yeah, true enough.
And the economic cost of disasters worldwide has hovered over $1 trillion a year, the total cost. What people focus on are the damages, which are often in the hundreds of billions, but that's not the number one cost, Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Direct damage is not the number one cost of disasters. Interruption is.
Yeah.
Interruption of business, interruption of livelihoods. That is where the real cost is. And I give a lot of credit to the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, because They got new leadership about 3 years ago, and they are all over this.
Mm-hmm.
And they project the same things that I've been projecting for years. That when you look at the total economic impact, negative impact of disasters, it's
Sure.
over $1 trillion a year. So you're taking about 1.5% of global economic output and you're flushing it down the toilet.
Yeah.
So when you put it in those terms, then people say, okay, what do we need to do? Well, you need to invest in resilience. And I have technology that can show anyone how an investment in resilience can be measured in terms of return on investment through
Yeah.
reduction in damages.
No, and that's
And
great
yeah,
insight.
yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are doing this. Well, the difference with us is we look at the total economic impact, not just the direct damages. We look at the social and societal impacts,
Mm-hmm.
and we also look at the environmental impacts through. If you have to rebuild infrastructure, you have to rebuild homes. Guess what you're using? Carbon. You
Mm-hmm.
can reduce carbon significantly by increasing resilience.
Yeah,
So when you
that's a
put all
very
that
good point.
together, yeah, when you put
A lot
all
of
that
people don't
together,
think about that because even if you just sort of had no issues, just with the growth of the population and the demand for those resources, i.e., carbon that's embedded in those, you're still going to have that. But you have that growth, population in the world globally, as well as, like you said, the rebuilding component. And we're not even talking about wars and other things that cause those, which are, you know, they're not environmentally driven. They're driven by human beings. That's a different story entirely, which could be, something we could have control over if we did. So even under the best of circumstances, it's an unfortunate equation. You
well,
mentioned Katrina. I'm sorry, you mentioned Katrina, which is some time ago. But speaking of resilience, if you look at fast forward to today, what Katrina was, what, 2005?
yeah, it was 20
Yeah,
years ago,
20,
last
20
year.
years, I thought, a long time ago. And that's a long enough time, you would think, or you'd like to think, but where are we today? Just on that, and then maybe just focus on that for a second, because obviously that sort of got everybody's attention, and that impacted you directly, right in your own, in your own home, backyard, so to speak. What has it really evolved where the awareness is obviously there, but what about the preparation and the diligence and the actual execution of doing something about it, which is what you're about when it comes to resilience? Are those in place now? Like if Katrina happened tomorrow, over 20 years later, are we better prepared than we were over 20 years ago, or is it marginally at best, or is it even the same?
Well, we had another Katrina 5 years ago on the 15th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Ida. The
Okay,
difference was it was the
yeah,
same size, same intensity
right,
as Katrina, but instead of going 40 miles east, Katrina actually hit in Mississippi, 40 miles east.
right.
It was the flood, it was the storm surge.
Okay,
The lake above New Orleans, which is 24 miles wide and 60 miles long, is a very shallow lake.
mm-hmm.
And that storm surge, because the water was so shallow, overcame the levees, the protection, the dikes protecting New Orleans, and that's why it
Sure,
flooded. So after Katrina, the United States government and the state co-invested, and they built a huge flood retention system, 20 up to 24 feet tall, solid concrete. It was $16 billion to do it, and everyone went, "Oh my God, $16 billion!" Well, 15 years after Katrina, Ida hits, same intensity, but it's a direct hit on New Orleans.
yeah,
Huge storm surge, just like Katrina. But instead of $160 billion, which was the total of damages in Katrina,
right,
it was less than $100 billion. The primary cost was the electric utility did not keep the electric grids resilient. It's a
mm-hmm.
private company, so they gave the money to their shareholders instead,
Yeah, yeah,
and
sure.
and that was about 90% of the damage. But there was no flooding. So when you look at it from that perspective, you make a a $16 billion investment, and it saves you $60 billion in damages. That's
Yeah,
the most elementary and real way for me to
Yeah, and that
describe
was a little
what to
while
do.
ago. So if you look at today moving forward with the convergence of technologies and the improvement, it would probably be even a better sort of ROI, if you
No,
will.
yeah, I think so.
And
I
you know,
think
like
there's
obviously
no
it's
question about
occurring.
that.
Yeah,
And this is true all over the world. And we can talk about typhoons in the Philippines. We can talk about the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which was the
sure.
worst disaster I'd ever seen. That was $240 billion and 19,000 people. You can't put a price tag on
No, no,
people.
you're right. It's
But what's happened is that technology is really moving swiftly now in this field, and like everything else we talk about, AI is a part of this.
I was just going to touch on that. I say with AI, would that help us in I mean, looking ahead for certain models, financial, economic, and environmental, and otherwise, to prepare
Well, the
better?
modeling system I have, Wayne, AI, we're implementing it now. It will
Excellent.
reduce the cost by 2/3 of gathering and analyzing the data.
That's
It'll
significant.
reduce the time, most importantly, to do this analysis from about 2 months to about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it really AI really I can give you a real live example of how it's changing things. But there are a lot of new technologies, and especially things that building managers should be
Hmm.
aware of, especially in materials.
Sure.
Anyone that was in California or other places around the world that had severe wildfires, there's new technology in building design to be very resistant to
I was
wildfire.
just going to say, there's a famous picture. It was somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Katrina or something related, but it was related to that sort of weather slash environmental event. And it showed the one house that had been constructed, newer home construction in the same neighborhood, and it showed all these houses around, which had virtually decimated. And it was a storm surge.
That's the
And there was
California
one that was
wild.
just standing there, like, and it was virtually nominal damage. Like, it was
That's the wildfires in Los Angeles, and there were about 5 homes that had been made. Their owner saw ahead and said, "This is going to happen again. Let's
yeah.
invest a little bit more and
And
make these
they
fires."
survived. I mean, their neighbors didn't, but they did. So it was, I mean, virtually nominal. It was very negligible damage. It
Mhm.
was not that much at all. So, like you said, when you look at the design and construction things, so as far as that resilience, to mitigate that, and then yeah, I hear you.
And there's
Well,
a lot of things that building managers can do that aren't very expensive, that can reduce damages in their facilities, and that's everything from hardening your framework so that you're better able to withstand an earthquake. We're having earthquakes where we never had them before,
yeah,
and there's not a direct tie between climate change and earthquakes, but there are many indirect ties.
sure. It
So
depends. I mean, to some degree, it depends where you are. There's more areas of the world that are more vulnerable, of course. Like
yeah,
that's just the way it goes. Uh,
right.
but yeah, it's just what you can do. I mean, you mentioned like so when you mentioned Katrina and overall, but in certain areas like a neighborhood or whatever, and you can maybe implement certain things with code changes, and when they rebuilt through the HOAs or whatever, or obviously most of the consensus of individual homeowners that took upon themselves to, like I said, build back better and that sort of thing. But also when you look at something like a municipality, like in an urban environment like New York City, when you had Sandy, that was quite the storm. Now there was a lot of things about that, that how do you prevent that ever happening again? And being an island, like it's vulnerable because of where they are, you know, not much above
Well,
sea level.
and it's going to take. They're now installing
But that was a
a flood
nightmare.
protection system in New York that's going to be about $60 billion.
You
But
got to spend the
they
money.
figure they can save double that at least
Sure,
if there's another Sandy. And
you
I
bet.
worked in New Jersey after Sandy. I was all over, the coast, the New Jersey coastline,
Right.
and there were a lot of improvements made in uh, the ability particularly to resist flooding in those communities. And we haven't had another Sandy, but if we do, I think we'll be better prepared. But this isn't you don't this isn't something, Wayne, where you go, okay, we did this, okay, goodbye, see you later. No, it's a constant
Mhm.
battle. And the thing that has really become, very apparent to those of us that watch this is this thing called rapid intensification.
Okay.
Hurricane Helena, which not only ravaged the northern coast of Florida, but also went all the way to North Carolina and did a ton of destruction and flooding in North Carolina. That hurricane intensified from a tropical wave, which is the lowest designation they have. It's just a disturbance.
Sure.
To a almost a Category 5 hurricane in 3 days. That used to take a week to 10 days.
So you had more time to sort of evacuate or get ahead of
this. It's on you before you know it, and it's become very strong. And that has to do with one thing: the water temperature of the Gulf of Mexico or whatever ocean you're in. And the Atlantic hurricanes, have traditionally done the same thing. They've taken forever. And the one that hit the Bahamas in the Caribbean,
sure,
was one of those that strengthened from Betsy. It's strengthened from Category 1 to Category 5, a strong Category 5 in 3 days. So these are changing the way we have to be able to respond to and be better prepared to be much faster.
Yeah. Has the forecasting gotten better? I mean, some of the communication systems and methods of doing that and evacuations and notifying people. I mean, assuming they're prepared with, like you said, the resilience steps that have been taken. But once it happens, you gotta move out of the way, so to speak. Is the forecasting gotten better? That does save lives too if you're prepared.
Well, the technology's definitely gotten better. The problem is funding. Okay. And without adequate funding, it's hard to make those things happen because you don't have the people and you don't have the funding to properly run the equipment and maintain it. Now, we haven't seen anything dramatic happen. Again, we were spared from any hurricanes in 2025, and that goes back several decades before we, the last time we had that much good fortune.
Yeah, that's just an anomaly, though.
That's going to change, and we know it is. Absolutely, we know it is.
Well, just like Sandy, too. If you had looked and said any kind of models were looking at the 100-year history, and you said we got to spend $60 billion to do this thing, they would have think you're crazy. Yep. Now they don't, because it's happened, and say we don't know when it's going to happen again. So there's that unpredictability factor that is prevalent, right? I mean, it's certainly not scaremongering or something that's unwarranted when you look. I mean, depending on the area, what you're talking about, what scale, but certainly, like you said, from facility managers too, from that perspective, when you look at risk mitigation, I mean, just talk to insurance companies; they'll tell you in places like Florida and that you can't even get insurance now. Condos, like certain things that have happened, it's triggered other events, and it's very, very difficult for a lot of people just to do whatever, right? You've got a place to live, and how you're going to, if you can't get the insurance, or if something happens, you have no insurance, they're just wiped out. So you're right. The impact, the socioeconomic, is much higher than the actual damage cost. That's a fraction of what the real cost is, the true total cost. So,
going back to the topic at hand, the problem is it's like purchasing insurance.
Yeah.
When you purchase insurance, life insurance, you're betting that you're going to die. And the life insurance company is betting that you're going to live. And so you can take that and apply it to, you're betting that there's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And your owners / investors are saying, well, wait a minute. Why are you betting that there's going to be a disaster? And what I would say to that is, just look at what's happened the past 25 years.
Yeah, true enough.
Which side do you want to be on?
Yeah, prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Investment, that the odds that you're going to have significant damage to your facilities are much, much higher than they were 20 years ago.
That's a very good point. And that's, and you have data and stats to back that up. Yeah, no, insurance is the only thing that you pay and you hope you never need it. It's not it's like nothing else you would really.
And that's the way. That's
Nothing
why
you
I'm
put it
trying
in.
to get
Yeah,
people, especially people that are investors, people that own things, to
sure.
look at this and say, this is insurance. That's what it is. And in fact, Wayne, this is something that's very important. Over the past 5 years, insurance linked securities and what's called alternative insurance has become a very, very popular method
Right.
to speed recovery and protect assets. And there are a number of really well tested and proven insurance style securities,
Okay.
what they call alternative insurance, that pays very quickly, that ensures that you don't sustain large losses. And you don't have to do that by yourself if you're managing a large office
Cool.
building.
Yeah.
You come in with the community,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
everyone does that together.
Yeah,
And
that's a
that's
great idea.
happening more and more. It's becoming extremely popular because it's a better solution.
Yeah, no, and geographic too. You spread the risk, and it's everybody has a common interest, so it makes total sense.
Exactly.
It's like a group benefit plan, so to speak, and it relates. And yeah, that's relatively new, or just in the last few years.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they've been around for a while, but they've really, really risen in
Okay.
popularity because the number of disasters has risen, and
Yeah.
so people are looking for alternatives. And it's a mature enough field now that you can, again, working with your community, you can tailor these policies exactly to fit your needs. And they have reduced, they because the volume has increased, the cost has reduced.
Yeah.
And so it's really becoming a great alternative. And in the U.S., Wayne, the real changes that are happening at the federal level with FEMA are
Sure.
going to necessitate more of this.
Oh, and like locally, as far as you're not relying upon. Yeah. No, that's a
Yep.
good point. Yeah, and you have
Yeah,
a
it's
best.
shifting the burden. I mean, and it's been, I'm not talking out of hand. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm just saying the administration has made it clear that they want to shift a lot of this burden, especially for long-term recovery, to the
Mhm.
states.
Well, economic. I mean, they have the vested interest too, and they would know better with how to manage that well. I mean, having the information, the resources, as opposed to relying on a central sort of
Well, that's true, and it's not true. What's true
governing. I guess
is
it depends if it's enacted
yeah,
upon.
decentralized model has its advantages, but a
Sure.
lot of these states don't have the knowledge base
No, so they need. Yeah.
in
Okay.
how to manage, especially the long-term recovery. So
How is that initiative for your organization? I mean, because that you raise a very good point. That
that's a part of what we're doing. I
needs.
have a partner organization. I tackle everything outside the United States. They lead everything
Okay.
inside the United States. And
Okay.
that's the Institute for Sustainable Development. And we're working together to try to implement that type of capacity building in the
Yeah,
states.
sounds like that's much needed. Is that gaining traction, momentum? Or is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's gaining traction. We are moving forward at a fairly crisp
Mhm.
pace, and I think that by the end of this year, we will have some things in place that can greatly help build this capacity of the states and communities to be
Okay.
able to do this type of disaster resilience and recovery.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about resilience, and it's sort of there again, putting the FM hat on, looking at it from that perspective. You look at what do we have to do? What's our current status or condition? Like your facility, your portfolio, your assets. What do we have to do to make it better and more resilient, and obviously to prepare for that type of unfortunate situation, which is going to occur at some. It's not a matter of if, it's when, and that you're
Right,
prepared for it and mitigate risk with cost reduction, all that stuff. But
right.
it really when you start poking it really raises the specter of what how bad things really are. I hate to be a doomsayer, but and they're getting into it now. I mean, it's over the years, the stuff that should have been done. We're talking like decades ago, and it's just been let go for whatever reasons. And it's not about a government who was in government at the time. I think all governments, whatever, who was ever in power, and Canada, the U.S., wherever you look, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the will, whatever political will. Anyway, it didn't happen. So you look like 40, 50 years later, stuff that should have been in years ago. I'm talking like crumbling infrastructure stuff, bridges, roads and stuff, and obviously in the more critical elements where it's more vulnerable than in some places. But it just really raises it's almost like a bottomless pit of what would be required. Like you say about investors, and you're going to look at the what's the most priority projects and things, the low hanging fruit, if they will, or what do they call it, to get what you need to get sort of in place. But there's a lot to be done, which is part of that sort of resilience, if you will, both on public assets and it's almost staggering when you think about it, the vulnerability. And it's like, where do you begin? And it's not cheap no matter how you look at it. I mean, but you have to do it. So it's just like getting the roadmap and what do you do first, and getting enough people, I guess, enabled to do that. But
well, it all goes back to you and I are old enough to perhaps remember these commercials back in the 70s and 80s. There's an old commercial for Pennzoil, the motor oil. It said, you can pay me now or pay me later.
I thought of that earlier. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a very good one too, and it's very true. And it's a lot cheaper to do it now than in the future, and do it at your convenience, not your inconvenience. Well, it's good that mind shift is changing, but you're right. It's now finding the money to do it, improving those success stories, and then just leveraging that to grow it to where it needs. But I guess it's the time. I mean, does technology, maybe it helps with, the time it used to take to do these things. I don't mean like putting together the project. I mean, actually physically like doing and executing it, because that's part of it as well, to get ahead of it, as much as you can sort of shrink that sort of construction timeline or rebuild timeline. But you're still talking years, but you just, if it's lower number of years, that's all you can really do. And the different projects of getting people, organizations, globally, to sort of,
Yeah, I mean, that's the key.
Yeah.
The key to me, the key for facility managers is to reach out, become active in the community, become a voice for improving community resilience, and there are so many resources out there now. I mean, I'm almost overwhelmed. I just be honest with you, with really good information that's coming out every day.
Sure.
About implementing resilience, doing it at the community level, doing it at the individual level, and I think facility managers are in a unique position, Wayne, to have a really positive influence on this. And so, and just talking to your members, I would just say, get out there and find out what's going on now, and find out how you can be a catalyst to improve resilience at every level, and that will by extension improve the resilience of your facilities.
Yeah, no, there's no question. You're right. It's a local situation. Everybody has to take ownership, and you have to look at it. How does this impact me, and what can I do to support the larger initiative? We've got some actually in the comment stream here. I'll just read of Kathleen. That's one of our colleagues, Kathleen Lusman. Very informative. This issue of insurance is a growing concern. So I think what you do they're probably happy to see you, support that initiative and get those things in place, because it's better for everybody. But it's obviously the insurance company, if they're going to insure, they want to be smart about it and make sure they mitigate their risk. So, these initiatives that you're pushing are of just foundationally are just where you want to be.
Well, I would really encourage, Wayne, Kathleen, and your members to do some some AI or Google searching and look at alternative insurance or insurance linked securities, because there's a lot happening out there, and it's some smaller companies specialize in this, but some of the large companies also that may be carrying your standard insurance will also do this.
Yeah, so we're going to be updating our website on GFMA website about a resource sort of repository for all this kind of stuff. We're in the process of building that and rolling that out in the not too distant future. Fran, my partner, he's raised the thing. Fran Raybuck, he just put a thing in here. Yeah, he said the long-term FEMA is pushing dollars and responsibility down to the local level. Locals in a region know best their community, what to do and how to do it. Just give us the money. So they're going to have to get whatever they get from the whatever levels of government and locally as well. But they need, like you're right, there seems to be a real void or certainly diminished state of capacity. So capacity building of those that have the expertise, not just in the private sector, but in the public sector, or they have to achieve the guidance to obtain that. But that seems to be the sort of the sweet spot that you're in to sort of support all of those initiatives and provide that sort of guidance and awareness and support. Because once you have that, once you have the knowledge, then you say, okay, how do I go about it? And that's it's great to hear that you're very much actively engaged in that. If you had to look in the world all over globally, just high level, when it comes to vulnerability / sustainability, resilience, where would you say the most vulnerable area of the world is?
Well, Africa is very vulnerable.
Okay.
And part of that has to do with resources, their stage of development that a lot of African countries are in. And then, next to that is, Southeast Asia, South Asia.
I was going to say Asia is high up there, depending because of the volatility and just
there are a myriad of things. You look at South Asia. India has come a long way. They are very vulnerable, but they have some really great organizations that are addressing that now. But you look at places like Indonesia and Malaysia. The Philippines, of course, has always been decimated by disasters, and then other countries such as Vietnam and Laos, that Thailand has had.
They got hammered years ago with that
flooding.
Yeah.
And so you look at the question I ask now is, where is the place that's best equipped to deal with it? Because they're happening everywhere.
No, you're right.
Who would have dreamed we'd have had the remnants of a hurricane hit southern England or tornadoes in France? I mean, these are things that are wildfire and flooding simultaneously in Greece.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, these things are, it really is. It's like someone just took the checkerboard and threw it up in the air.
But I find it's a combination. Yeah, I find it's a combination of things too. If you look at, just to take that bad fire in California a few years back, the Cap, what was it called? Forget the name of it often, but anyway, the Wall Street Journal did a very good investigative journalism piece, and it was very, very comprehensive and had some pictures and good background. And basically, dry conditions. So that's weather related, fair enough. But there was the vulnerability from the lack of preventive maintenance that
was Paradise, which was
that was that PSG had not done. So of course, it's like a tinderbox. It's going to happen. You're at the worst possible. It's the perfect storm in a very bad way, and they were vulnerable, and that's the case. I mean, you could mitigate.
Well, again, there's going to be a point in which we can't keep putting it off. We cannot keep pushing this under the rug. It's going to come back out, and it's going to be larger. And that's what I'm, been trying to yell out in the forest, that, just because no one's there doesn't mean that the tree doesn't make a noise when it falls.
No, that's true enough. You don't know what's happening until it's just about to happen. Kathleen raised another good question here. We've got in the book. Is there a greater weather type disruption in the southern countries, like the southern hemisphere?
The southern hemisphere, by and large, if you look at all the factors combined, population, wealth, all of those things. The southern hemisphere is much more affected than the northern. That's a great thing to bring up, Kathleen, because if you're in, well, let's just take Brazil, and Brazil is one of the wealthiest countries in the southern hemisphere.
Sure, yeah.
And they have had utter devastation. The southernmost state in Brazil, which was it was their equivalent of the Midwest for us, the manufacturing hub.
Okay.
A very large state with a huge population. The entire thing was flooded. The entire state was underwater.
Incredible. Yeah.
And the things that are happening, you couldn't imagine anymore. And I think maybe it was Kathleen, someone said something about the 1,000 year, maybe it was you, Wayne. I think you had said something about that to me before that we got on this. There's no such thing as 1,000-year flood anymore.
Oh no, those are
And it was never meant that it was only once in 1,000 years. It meant that there was a 1 in 1,000th chance of it happening in any given year. But that's had to be wiped completely away because
yeah.
Louisiana,
Yeah.
Louisiana in 2016, we had two 500-year floods 4 months apart.
Yeah, so that goes out the window. That's sort of, I mean, that worked years ago when you go back 100 years, but then, you got to look at all the scenario, what the impact is and what the number of people, what you're generating and all the impacts that those have and why those things. I mean, that's an exercise in itself for, I'm sure many very smart people to try to correlate to what that really means. But you just say there is a difference from 100 years ago and in many respects for what we're consuming or, materials, what the world, how the planet operates today than it did years ago. So obviously there's different impacts. Another question came up, metrics and that for sustainability. That's another thing because obviously you're involved. I'm involved in the standards with international ISOs and FM standards in particular. I know you are as well, and subject matter expert putting expertise into that. What do you see that as it's more standardization is what it's all about, but there seems to be local standard, like there's competing standards, metrics for sustainability and that as well as, well, in other realms too, even on the FM side, although that seems to be somewhat coalescing to a more common thing because otherwise you can pick something that's good today and maybe tomorrow and a year or two from now, I think, oh, there's something new. And then you've kind of, so you sort of don't want to be an early adopter. You want to make sure it's established before
I'll put it in technical terms, Wayne. It's a mess.
Yeah. So that doesn't change.
I give UN DRR, UN Disaster Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, a lot of credit because they've really taken a charge in trying to standardize some of these metrics, but there's still a long way to go. And I work closely with the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, who's a partner of UNDRR. Mm-hmm. And they're based in India. They are a great group of people, and I work hand in hand with them on trying to really come up with global standards that eliminate a lot of the confusion. Because if you're a building manager, you're a facility manager, you're out there looking, you'll be overwhelmed. I mean, it's really become to me. I know you can't have too much information, but it's too much different information.
Yeah, it's confusing and conflicting. Yeah, I agree.
That's my self-criticism of my profession. Is we've got to become more uniform. Now, not everything, every place is different. We know that, but you need to have some standardization of what resilience really is.
Yeah, on the core elements, and you look what's specific to your particular area or region, or in this case, a client's needs, whatever, because there's differences, right? Every situation or is different.
Absolutely.
Kathleen raises another good question here. Preparedness will and should impact building design and construction details. Well, that is happening, and that's sort of like a trend that is much more, and the costs do come down too. And as you do that and get that integrated with BIM and all the other good information and technologies, it's much better along. So you have a handle on it. It says as well as O&M routines, or can this even be anticipated? Well, I would sure hope so. And then given like I got over 35 years in the business and, it's come a long way, but you certainly have to. That's imperative that you anticipate that, what's going on and you incorporate that to your routine. SOPs, your standard operating procedures are critical or key. Yes, you have your priority ones, you have the lesser ones, but it's what you do and how you best do it. And it's, absolutely. I think how you manage and maintain makes a difference in what you're going to have as far as, if you don't maintain your facilities. And like you said, there's all those things that are factors come into play. And for the owner of the building, it's going to impact them. They're going to get the financial hit as well as reputational risk and other things if something happens that you could have mitigated that risk or prepared for. So,
but Wayne, there's one point that I really want to drive home, and I've said it indirectly. I want to say it directly. Your facility, even if you have a large, multi-layer office complex with 50-story high buildings, you're still a part of a larger community.
Absolutely.
And you are only as resilient as your community. I love this is a story that really alerted me that way back in 2011 when I went to Japan.
Okay.
We went to the home of Nippon Steel where it was founded. It was a port city,
Interesting.
and they had a huge plant there, one of their first plants. And this was 4 months after the disaster. The disaster happened in April. I was there in late June,
Okay.
early July. And I asked the facility manager, the plant manager, what happened, because it didn't look like it was badly damaged. I said, was there internal damage? He said, no. He said, we were able to be up and running within 3 days. The problem was we had no people. If the
Okay.
community's not resilient
Yeah.
and the employees of your tenants and your own building staff are not resilient, how are you going to be able to get your facility back up and running in a decent period of time? That is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a glaring omission to have, like you say, have the like the sort of the buildings, the infrastructure, sort of you've got that sort of addressed, but you don't have the on the staffing and your business continuity, all that sort of stuff, and communications, what you do, and you have loss of power or other things. How are you going to manage and get through it? It's one thing to sort of respond to the emergency and then
Well,
get back up.
I'll ask a question.
Right?
And I don't mean to be arrogant, guys. I have tremendous respect for. I mean, I've worked with you guys, for decades.
Yeah.
But have you ever asked your tenants if how many of them have a business resilience plan?
Very few, sadly, I would suggest. I mean, they don't think about it. It's not their core business, and they just think it's being taken care of. Someone else will take care of it.
But
But
that's one of the greatest things you could
bigger
do, in
companies
my
don't.
opinion,
Yeah,
is to say, hey, let's just bring, and you can bring people in for, I do it for free. I mean, because I believe in it. Just to bring someone in to do a short course. You could do it. You could do it all online. But getting that information in the hands of your tenants
yeah.
could not just
Well,
save them, could save you.
yeah, we need to do a course, Dave. That's a separate discussion, but certainly we're ramping up our learning platform in the coming months. So that's something, just have a free, free courses just of the fundamentals, and you're happy to sort of get that out. And then there's the paid ones after, which are quite reasonable. But it's just really sharing that information and getting it out there as an awareness. And you mentioned the FMers too. There's only so many that are older guys like me that are still consulting and doing whatever because I love what I'm doing. But there's a lot of new entrants coming into the FM, and over the next few years, more people are going to retire, and they won't be, they'll be out of the business. So there's going to be more of a need for, like you say, the guidance of subject matter expert in all these key areas. So training is a key thing. So that's something for a separate discussion, but we should certainly do that and have a training like online demand training for that sort of thing. I think that's something that's going to be much needed, and it's an awareness, and then it's training and being prepared for that sort of thing. And there's only so much you can do, but there's a lot to do. So you raise the good points. We're sort of running on time. We've such a great discussion. We still have some time left. What about your book? Let's get into some other areas about what you're doing. You're a very creative and innovative guy, and when you're talking about resilience, I say that as a person, personally, you're very resilient. So I know you had a book just come out recently. Tell us about that, and
Oh,
maybe
thank
a plug
you,
for that
Wayne.
too.
Yeah, I won't take long to do this.
No, for sure.
In 2019, I was doing disaster recovery in Puerto Rico. We stayed in Puerto Rico 5 years.
Okay.
Longest by far recovery operation we ever did. I was working for the Economic Development Administration doing economic recovery. And in the middle of that, I had a small wound in my foot, and I contracted a deadly bacterial infection, and I had to have my left leg removed to save my life. The only way you can treat it is to remove it. And so they removed my left leg. I learned how to walk with a prosthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And 25 years before that, I had been involved in a horrific automobile accident, and I almost died, and I had to recover from that. So friends started saying, "Why don't you write a book about what happened to you And I thought, you know what, this could serve a purpose.
Yeah.
So I tell my story. I tell about what happened to me and some other things in between. But within that, I embed 5 principles of personal resilience. And it's a very short book. It's only 73 pages. You could read it in one sitting.
Yeah.
But it was designed that way because the thing I wanted people to do was to take away those 5 principles for whatever happens. There's none of us that are, outside of college that have not had something happen. And a lot of people below that age have had something happen in their lives, losing a loved one, divorce, financial problems, whatever it is, and disasters.
Stuff happens.
And so this was designed to appeal to anyone who's having hardship and the things that you can do to effectively rebound, recover, and come back stronger.
Yeah. No, that's great.
And
I'm glad
it's called Where Do I Sign? It's on Amazon. If you have a Kindle subscription, you can download it free.
Yeah, I have it. It's great. No, that's why I wanted to. I that was on my list of things to bring up in our discussion today, even if it's at the latter part. But I think it's good. It's a good read, and it's certainly and you're sharing it. This is not just something you dreamt up. It's based on your own personal experience. So nothing is better and more crucial than that. It's a great read, and I'm sure will resonate with those that get it. So and which hopefully as many. We'll promote that. So I'll put that up in our after when we send this out with the link of the recording for this those that weren't able to attend today. We have any more questions? We just have Kathleen just said, great you wrote the book and that, and Fran, congrats on your recovery. Well, this is it. I mean, but just by your disposition and how your character, and you look at I'm only looking at you from your head and shoulders and having a good chat, and you're something an affable guy.
I'd have to wheel back for you to see I'm in a wheelchair. I have a prosthetic. I wear a prosthetic most of the time, but when I'm working, I might as well be in a chair.
You never know it. So it's how you sort of adapt. It's not that things don't happen in life to anybody. I mean, those that say nothing happens, they're not being truthful. But everybody has something, and some more than others, maybe, and some of them maybe they're self-inflicted. But for the most part, stuff happens in life that you can do nothing about. But the key is not that it won't happen or trying to prevent that from happening, because that's just not possible. But it's how you adapt and how you move on from that, and how you rebuild or recover and be resilient. And nothing could be a better topic. And when I was just having a discussion with a colleague this morning, and in the UK about certain things, and it was just it's a very different world. We sort of reflect, and you sort of have a bit of you digress on a sidebar discussion about whatever's going on in the world and how it impacts us or other people or whatever the general topic of discussion is. But it just, you look at the world today, and it's very, there's this.
Well, there's a lot of turmoil, and that can really affect you in ways you don't even realize. I take no credit for being resilient. I had the most resilient pair of parents. They were 43 when I was born, and I'm 65.
Yeah,
they were from the greatest generation. They went through the Depression and World War II.
Yeah, so
my mom had a habit of putting things on her refrigerator. I'm sure a lot of my fellow people on this have moms that did that. Yeah. She had this one that was so great. It's a very simple saying: life breaks us all, but where we heal, we are stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. Very good saying. Kathleen was just asking, just mention it again. I'll put the link up on the link to your book as well. And when we do it in the post on LinkedIn, the name of your book again is
Where Do I Sign?
Where Do I Sign? That's what I thought it was.
From Tragedy to Resilient Triumph.
That's the subtitle. Yeah. Where Do I Sign? Okay.
Where Do I Sign? The title.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you'll get a few clicks on that, and the more people, like you say, it's on Amazon as well. It's there's much more we could have covered. We've come up to the hour, and it's been, even though we started a few minutes later. If we didn't have any more questions, we can certainly table something for another discussion, maybe more focused on some of the priorities, or in whatever we want to pick as a certain initiative, maybe on certain things to discuss and dissect. David, with your expertise, I'm sure will be very much welcome. So we'll definitely have
a lot of fondness for this profession.
Yeah.
Because I dealt with building managers, facility managers for decades. So anytime, I'm available anytime.
Well, we'll definitely have you back in the near future, and we'll pick a relevant, timely topic and for in introspective discussion, and we can open it up to, like you said, we have it like a one-on-one interview, but we can always open it up to a panel as well, yourself and some other folks. And
Yeah, I could bring a couple of people. One that is a great guy, and he doesn't sell. I wouldn't bring anyone to sell anything, but he can
No,
give
we
you a
don't.
lot of great information about alternative insurance. His name's Alex Korb. He's a super guy,
Okay. Well,
and
maybe we'll tee that up for in the near future
yeah,
and have a follow on for that, because and we're going to be posting these on our YouTube channel and through LinkedIn as well. So everybody that and it's streamed, so who wasn't able to join us today, there's always the residual people that will click on this to watch the recording and have a transcript as well. So it's just good to share that information, and a great just love having great guests like yourself that can really open up and bring value to the discussion and share, and it's a benefit to everybody. So thanks again, David, and be well.
100% my pleasure, my friend. And
We will talk real soon.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks,
Thanks everyone.
Take care now. Bye for now.